Hello, my name is Paul Heron, and in this video we're going to look at basic editing. Now, to follow on, go to the files that have been given to you by your tutor and open up the basic editing spreadsheet. Okay, so in this sheet we have a series of instructions that we need to follow. So I'm going to go through each of these instructions and I'm going to describe the actions I'm taking. So move the value in C2 to C3. So there's C2 and we need to move that to C3. Now there's a couple of ways I can do this. I could copy on C2 and click on Control and X, or I could right click and click on Cut, and then I could go into C3 and Control V to paste. An alternative way to do this, and we have to do the same thing in section 2 here in K2 for H2 and I2, I can highlight these cells and drag them down. I do that again. So highlight the cells, click on the green box around the cell so that I get the crosshairs and just drag it down. I can do that with both cells simultaneously by dragging across the two cells. So to do that, I click in the middle of the cell and drag across, select the two cells and then get my crosshairs and drag down. The next instruction is to change all column widths appropriately. So to do that, I need to go to the A column, click on the top here where the column letters are, drag across. When I go to the little line just on the column edge, you see that cursor changes to a little crosshair, double click, and each of these then extends out so that they are wide enough for the widest piece of data in the column. Now I need to sort the data in order of amount, largest to smallest. Again, there's a couple of ways I can do this. So one way would be to click in amount in the top cell of the amounts. And then I'm clicking on Control, Shift and down arrow to select the whole column. Then within the Home tab, I go to Sort and Filter and click smallest to largest, or I could click on largest to smallest if I want to sort from the largest to the smallest, but in this instance I'm going to sort from smallest to largest. When I click on this, it's going to ask me whether I want to expand the selection, and normally speaking you will want to do this, and what this means is when it sorts this column, it appropriately sorts all of the other columns as well. If I only sort this column, then these amounts get sorted, but all the other data in the spreadsheet stays the same, which isn't usually what you'll want to do. So I sort there, and as you can see now, all of the data is sorted from the smallest to the largest. Now I just noticed here, my mistake, sort the data in the amount largest to smallest. So I click on the Sort and Filter again, sort largest to smallest. And there we go. Another way I can do this is to select anywhere within the table, click on Sort and Filter and add in filters, and what this does is add filters to my column headers. Now it didn't add filters to the data over here, and that's because there's this column with nothing in it. So Excel makes the assumption that the data here is actually a table, but where there's a separation, in other words an empty column, it doesn't include the other data in your worksheet in a column. So now I can take any of these columns and I can sort. Another interesting thing is here, I can actually filter the data. So by default, everything is displayed, but I can decide, you know what, I only want to show, so I deselect all the columns and I can select any of these columns and it will filter the data to that individual item in the column, or I can choose a number of different items and I can have various data sets shown that way. Next thing I want to do is delete columns A and B, code and entity. So columns A and B. The way I delete columns is I'm going to select at the top of the column and drag across, right click and delete. Now the difference between delete and cut is if I delete, the data that I'm deleting isn't stored in the computer memory, it's just deleted off. Cut means that the memory is stored in the computer, it's called the clipboard, that I can then paste that later. So if I cut, I can cut the data and then I can paste it. I'll just demonstrate that. So I'm going to cut that column, and you can see the columns are now highlighted to be cut. I will open up a new spreadsheet, or a new worksheet, sorry, and I'm going to do Control V, and that will paste, or right and paste, and that will paste the data. The quickest way to do that is to use the Control V shortcut on the keyboard. To undo, I'm going to use Control Z, so that undoes any changes. So there's my data. I'm going to hit the escape key so I no longer selected that, and this time what I want to do is delete that data. So highlighting A and B, or selecting A and B, right click and delete. Now if you notice then the old B column is replaced, the column headers are reassigned, so now my second column is still B. So I still have B and C even though I had previously deleted the data that was in B and C. Now B and C has the data that had previously been in D and E. Okay, so delete the blank cells at the top without deleting the questions. So we've got questions here, then there's a gap, and then I want to bring all of these right so that they're all in the top two rows. So select the data just by highlighting in the corner, dragging across and then up, right click and then click on delete. Now I'm going to be asked, do you want to delete, shift the cells left? I don't want to do that. I want to shift all the cells up. So click on that and you can see here all the cells were shifted up. The next question is to insert a new column before column A with a header code and fill the following sequence down each row: A1, A2 and A3. Okay, so to insert a column, I go to the column after the column I want to insert. So in this case it's just the first column. Right click and insert. I'm going to put the term code at the top, and then I'm going to start a pattern. So A1, A2. Now that there's a pattern, Excel will pick up this pattern and continue it on down to the end of the data in the table. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. One is to highlight two columns and to click, and you can see there's a little square just to the bottom right hand corner. I can drag that down and I can drag that all the way down, but there's quite a few rows in my data. So the quicker way to do that is to select the cells that have the pattern in them and then double click. And what that does then is continue that data all the way down until it finds a blank row. In this case, the blank row comes right at the end of the table. Find a record with a transaction number 200-0981. The best way to do this is to first of all highlight the data that I want to find and Control C to copy, or I can right click and copy. Most developers would just use the Control C. Then what I need to do is go to find, click up here, or I can use Control F on my keyboard, Control F, and that will bring up a find dialog, and I'm going to find that data. So that finds that data, and then the instruction is to delete the row. So right click, select the row, right click and delete. The next instruction is to replace the word business with business, and you can see there's a typo here. There's only one S and there should be two, and it's in column F. So I click on the column, go to find and select, go to replace, and then here I need to tell the system that I want to find the word business with one S and then put a space in, and I want to replace that with the word business also with a space. The reason I put a space in is because if business is spelled correctly, well, it is going to find this business. It will replace that with the word business, but we could end up with 3 S's instead of 2. So I click now on replace all, and the system now tells us that we made 120 replacements. Click OK. Just check that looks fine. The next thing we're going to look at is question 10, remove the hyphen from trans no. So up here we have trans no with a hyphen in it. So what I do here is Control F, click on replace. So I'm looking for trans no with a hyphen and trans no with no hyphen. Make sure we get the casing correct. I'm happy with that, that's correct now, and replace all. So before I replace all, I would really need to select the whole, let's see, where does it say where it is? It doesn't say, so let's just grab all of the data or select all of the data and then replace all. So by selecting all of the data, what that did was to make sure that we're selecting all of the data in the table, and anywhere we had trans hyphen number, that's going to be replaced, but it only found one instance of that. Now, for those of you with sharp eyes, I had to just change this to correct this question. So it asks, move column F, expenses area, to after the supplier. So highlight column F, click on cut. Now it's after the supplier, so if I click on this E, which is the one just after the supplier, right click and insert cut cells, these cells then are inserted in column F. The data that's in column F will be pushed over to the right. Hide column F trans number. So sometimes we want to hide columns. Now we're not deleting a column, we're just hiding the data within it. In this instance, I'm going to show you how to hide more than one column. So if I select the column headers up here, right click and then select hide, that hides those columns. And sometimes you want to do that just to reduce the amount of data that you're studying on your sheet at any given time. Now that data isn't deleted, it's still here. So you can see now we're going from column D to column H. So to unhide that data, I just select the column headers, right click and unhide. I can do the same with rows if I want to do that. So just select the rows I want to hide, click and hide the rows. And you can see there going from row 21 to 32. To bring those back, highlight them, right click and unhide. Now create a new worksheet. This data in our spreadsheet is in what's called a worksheet, and you can see down at the bottom here we have worksheets and they have various names on them. So I'm going to create a new worksheet by clicking on the plus to see what the rest of the instruction is here. Create a new worksheet, copy the data into it, keeping the formatting, and rename the new worksheet as Finance Updated. So I click a new worksheet, double click and Finance Updated. Go back to my finance sheet and this wants me to copy all the data into it. To select all the data on the table, I'm going to just click on the top right hand corner, Control A to select all the data, Control C to copy it, or I could right click and click on copy. Click then on my Finance Updated sheet. Now what I tend to do is just widen out some of these columns just so that the data will fit widthwise in the column. Right click on the column header and click on paste. Now I have some alternatives here. If I click on paste, then this brings over any formatting and any other formulas or functions that I have within the data sheet. If I click on the 1, 2, 3, there's only the values that are displayed will be copied over to the next sheet. There's a few other icons and we will talk about those as we go through the course. So I'm just going to click on paste so it copies everything across. So if you notice here, we still have these bolded. I didn't bold this one, I bold it now. So I'm clicking on the cell and Control B to make it bold. So now I've copied that data over. I'm going to undo that now, so Control Z to undo. Click on my finance. If I only wanted to copy a couple of the columns over, I can just select, say, column D and E. Actually, I will escape and then select column D and E. Control C to copy that data. I'll go back into my finance updated, right click on the top corner and then click Control and V to paste. So in this instance, I've only copied and pasted 2 of the columns. Freeze the panes on the row headings. Now this is quite useful. Very often, and particularly we have lots of data and perhaps lots of columns, and maybe they all just store numbers. It can be quite difficult to know which column you're looking at as you scroll down. Now just a wee tip, see where you have, I had selected this area, I want to unselect that, and the way to get out of that is just to click on the escape key. So I want to freeze these panes, the top row. So the way to do that is go to the View tab and click on Freeze Panes. And I have a couple of options here, so I can freeze the first column. I want to freeze the top row, which is this one. So I click on that. And now when I scroll down on the data, my top row remains. It's worth having a little play with this just to see what the various options do for you. Okay, so that gives you some ideas what you can do with your freeze panes. That can be quite useful. Now there's 2 other worksheets that you'll have access to, so exports and investment. I would encourage you to have a go at these. Pretty much it's the same as everything we've just done, but it'd be good practice for you to go ahead and do all of that. Where you have hashes here, now we did cover this in the previous video, but where you have hashes, this is where the column isn't big enough to be able to display all of the data within the column. Where you have that, just select the columns and right click on the edge of the column, and the column will be made wide enough to contain the data that's stored within the particular cell. So we've done quite a bit of basic editing on our worksheet. The next video we're going to look at some formatting. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks very much for watching.